Silver's clean energy future.
And here from Willem Middlecoop, who's reporting that silver production in Peru is down 9.8% in March. So I had to share with you guys this chart, which was shared by Tavi. Commodity producers, so capex versus dividends and buybacks. And Tavi says, I don't care if you think this insanity is being caused by shareholder or political pressure. Resource companies are almost returning more capital to their shareholders than investing in their own businesses. This is not a sign of a commodity cycle at its peak, period. Pretty emphatic there, and yeah, he's got a point, especially with this chart. And here, interesting from an article in the Time magazine, inconvenient, the four pillars of civilization all require fossil fuels and more of them. The modern world can't exist without these four ingredients. They all require fossil fuels. So what are those four ingredients? Well, four materials rank highest on the scale of necessity, forming what I have called the four pillars of modern civilization. Cement, steel, plastics, ammonia are needed in large quantities than are other essential inputs. The world now produces annually about 4.5 billion tons of cement, 1.8 billion tons of steel, nearly 400 million tons of plastics, and 180 million tons of ammonia. But it is ammonia that deserves the top position as our most important material. Its synthesis is the basis of all nitrogen fertilizers. Without their applications, it would be impossible to feed at current levels nearly half of today's nearly 8 billion people. And from Dr. Patrick Moore, who was one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, shares this article, says India announces plans to double coal production by 2040 and catch up with China. Net zero, rest in peace. And I actually heard many years ago the minister in India say that India, no matter what the globe wants to do, no matter what the West want to do with, net zero this and solar panels that and windmills this, they plan on buying more Australian coal each and every year for the next several decades. And that was only a handful of years ago. And at the time, coal was demonized. Coal was, and I say that the best performing asset class since the 1990s was cigarettes. Why? During the 90s, it was demonized, and yeah, it's bad for your health, but coal demonized. Coal, we bought positions in coal, and I've shared on this channel 1.8 times earnings. That they're almost giving it away. Some other coal positions, I've shared my Peabody story, where I 10x my return from October 2020 through to around October 2021. Another stock company that we bought, another coal company we bought, within 2 years we're getting 58% dividend yields on our buy price. I mean, that is what I call deep value investing. And it's funny, those other positions, those coal positions that I bought, they just continue going up and up and up and up to where the point I'm now at the point of maybe I need to take some profits here. Coal's run up in a big way. Maybe I need to take some profits and reinvest it. And I did that with Peabody. I reinvested it. I identified and found some oil stocks, both producers and oil explorers, and those stocks have performed well since I bought into them as well, obviously on the back of the oil price, and that was in October 2021. So yeah, but coal's not going anywhere, and natural gas isn't going anywhere. And when you look at the economics of so-called green renewable energy, I call it rebuildable because It's not renewable. And the facts are we need baseload power, and I believe at some point we're going to move to nuclear, and so uranium is going to be very big. So I'm bullish uranium, but I'm actually waiting on a pullback in uranium because it has had a great run up. So for me to add to my current positions or to add to new positions, I'm waiting for some pullbacks in uranium, and I think that will come. But longer term, I'm very bullish uranium. So late last week, I went to an investor conference that had all the big fund managers there, all the big brokers there, and all of them except for one talked about ESG. It was just an ESG festival, and they're talking about green technology and invest in this green technology and that green technology. There's only one person who basically said there's a debate on both sides, that this doesn't necessarily add up. And he admitted, this fella, that that if we go down this route, that it is going to be very inflationary and that we're going to see much, much higher energy costs. And he said that is the whole point. That is the whole point, is to make energy more expensive so we use it less. And so I think it's pretty obvious that that's where it's going. Now, the interesting thing that this gentleman confirmed, and it's something that I've always known, is he basically said that it's not renewable, and the amount of minerals and the amount of mining that needs to be done, if you want to go, solar, wind, etc., there's, and electric vehicles, there's actually not enough cobalt in the world to do this. So there's not enough minerals in the world to actually do this. So he said, in the long run, this is a pipe dream. And he said the other thing is, all this energy, it's not renewable because it has a shelf life, and then you need to rebuild it. You need to rebuild more solar panels. You need to rebuild more windmills. And he said recycling isn't that easy, where you just recycle it all. And it was, I think, an eye-opener for many in the audience who had no idea, but this is something I've been talking about for a long time. And so I see where the world's going, and so I'm investing in these areas to benefit, because there's going to be a boom in this sector. But ultimately, as a civilization, if we want to remain a healthy civilization, we need base load energy, reliable base load energy. And if we're going to get rid of coal, I don't think we should, but if we did, then we need natural gas and we need nuclear. We need uranium. So hydrogen has some potential, but it's very dangerous, and we haven't got there yet. Maybe one day we will, but we haven't. And solar and wind, it just cannot. It cannot provide for our needs as a developed civilization. But let's have a look at silver's clean energy and the metals and minerals that I believe we can profit off. So here you can see that they say, as electric vehicles supplant gas guzzlers and solar panels and wind turbines replace coal and oil as the world's most important energy sources. Yeah. If we do that, we are all going to be in abject poverty. Metals like lithium, cobalt, and rare earths are on the brink of rapidly accelerating demand, along with more familiar industrial metals like steel and copper. So this is what, in this Bloomberg article, they think is going to happen out to 2050. And I believe they'll certainly try until we have social chaos and those elites cop all the blame. And according to Jessica Fung, it's this energy transition that's going to drive the next commodity supercycle. And I've done a video on that, the commodity supercycle, and I believe that she's right for all the wrong reasons. So by 2030, demand for cobalt used in many battery types will jump by about 70%, while consumption of lithium and nickel by the battery sector will be at least 5 times higher. There'll be a need for more manganese, iron, phosphorus, graphite, while copper needed in clean energy technologies and to expand electricity grids will also be a major beneficiary. Copper, I'm extremely bullish on copper and nickel. Aluminium, very, very bullish on them. And for silver, it's really all about solar panels. So solar panels with the capacity, power capacity of a gigawatt need about 8.5 tons of silver. That's 18.5 tons of silver. And wind turbines, a lot of concrete, a lot of aluminium, a lot of copper, and a lot of steel. What's the CO2 emissions in generating all of this, all of these materials to make a wind turbine? Like, CO2 is the bad guy, right? Personally, no, it's not. That's just not me. That's thousands and thousands of scientists that say that. Many of you can disagree with me, but that's fine. I follow the science. Maybe not some scientists that people want me to follow, but anyway. But if CO2 is the boogeyman, then what's the CO2 level in creating all this materials for wind turbines? And then they need to be replaced. So that's more and more mining. This is very mining intensive. And lithium ion batteries, just more and more material. Look, I'll put a link in the description of this article. You guys can read the rest of it in your own time. I'm actually starting to get annoyed. So I started recording this video by going through this silver report, which was dated back in February 2021, about silver's clean energy future. And as I was going through this, recording this video, it just wound me up. I got so angry and frustrated with some of the wording and language. And so I deleted it. And I'm like, no, I cracked it. No one's ever going to hear this video, blah, blah, blah. But I just think there's some important elements to share. And yes, silver will play a critical role in this energy transition. I don't call it a green revolution because it's not. But it is, and that's why I'm bullish silver and other base metals, because of where the elites and politicians are moving us. They're transitioning us to this electrification of the economy, let's put it that way. And silver will play a big role. And so what I'll do, I'll put a link in the description below. You can read this article in your own time. Yes, silver will play a greater role, and there will be more demand on the industrial side as we look at $173 trillion investment into this transition. So, but what I want to do is now cut to a short little clip from a podcast that Mike Thiessen did with Professor Bob Murphy, who's an Austrian economist, and I highly recommend you guys listen to the whole podcast, and I'll put a link in the description below. But let's just check out what economist Bob Murphy had to say about this whole issue.
Bob, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
The topic of the day right now that I want to ask you about is what we're seeing globally, and then specifically here in Canada under our Liberal government. We are seeing a real push for a green agenda, a climate change agenda, to change the economics of our country. So specifically, we see, in the COVID-19, the Great Reset, we see the WEF literally saying that individuals should change their behaviors and that we should have national structural changes in order to battle climate change because everything is intertwined. And what are you seeing across the spectrum with this force to move to a green agenda so quickly, and how that is connected to, or how is that going to affect our economics?
Well, sure. So great question. So let me start with some sort of more easily demonstrated claims, for some of your listeners who might, not be familiar with this literature. So I think the biggest takeaway I want to get across is the policies that the more extreme activists are pushing, and that, for example, in Canada, what the government policymakers are adopting, they do not follow from the mainstream peer-reviewed science. And so for decades in this climate change debate, the activists have been just using hey, follow the science, calling their opponents deniers, sort of evoking, images of Holocaust denial to say, if you oppose these policy measures, it's because you just are ignorant of the science, or you're just, some dupe of big oil or something. And so what I want to stress is the actual measures being put forward do not at all follow from the conventional mainstream published literature. Just to give some examples. So right now, the federal carbon tax in Canada is set to increase to, I think it's $170 a ton by the year 2030. That is way out of line with the standard projections about what the so-called social cost of carbon will be by 2030. Okay, so again, if stipulating the whole premise of mankind's emissions of carbon dioxide constitute a negative externality, and that's causing damages, and so therefore government has a role in sort of putting an extra disincentive in place to get all the pros and cons lined up so businesses naturally do the socially optimal thing. That's the standard sort of chalkboard economics approach to this stuff. And I'm saying the estimates they have are like for $60 or $70 a ton of what the damage is going to be. And so to be taxing it at $170 a ton doesn't follow even on its own terms, right? Even if you stipulate the basic framework. So that number is not coming from the science. Besides which, Canada is just a bit player in the whole overall scheme. So it really makes no sense for Canada to be having these draconian penalties on carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions if the rest of the world isn't following suit. Because what that just means is emissions will migrate out of Canada and go to, say, China or somewhere else. So it's not even doing that much for global emissions. All it's doing is punishing Canadian businesses. To give another quick example of this huge chasm between what the official policies that are being promulgated and pushed versus what the literature says, William Nordhaus won the Nobel Prize recently in economics for his work on climate change. And his Nobel Prize-winning model suggests allowing total global warming of about 3.5 degrees Celsius. And yet, as I'm sure you're aware, and your listeners who follow this stuff, the UN and the other activist groups in the Paris Climate Accords and agreement and so forth are saying, as an absolute most we can allow is 2 degrees Celsius, and let's try to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. And so it's not merely that Nordhaus is more liberal in that. Nordhaus's own work shows even the 2 degrees Celsius limit would be so draconian, would hurt business and households so much by making energy more expensive, that it would be worse for humanity to do that rather than do nothing at all about climate change. Right. So that again, so it's not just like, he disagrees by a few percentage points. He's saying that goal is worse than doing nothing. And again, he's not some right winger. This is a guy who published with Paul Samuelson and so forth. I mean, he's a liberal guy. He won the Nobel Prize for his work trying to alert humanity to the dangers of carbon dioxide emissions. And yet his own work is saying, so my point being, it's not just a matter of, is this a problem or not? I'm saying the solutions that are being pushed by the UN and by the Canadian government, other governments around the world, don't follow at all from the mainstream Nobel Prize winning literature. So it makes you realize something is screwy is going on here. This really isn't just about well-meaning people who are trying to save our grandkids.
And now the Bank of England chief issues apocalyptic warning about food prices, something that we've been talking about a lot on this channel for almost last 12 months now. And a shout out to Climate Craze, who is a subscriber of Finance Uncut. And this is actually how I got in touch with him. He has a wonderful little YouTube channel with some wonderful little bite-sized videos, little 2-3 minute clips on the science behind this climate change movement. And so I highly recommend, guys, check his channel out. If you like it, subscribe. I think he's doing a wonderful, wonderful job with his channel, and I just wanted to share it with you guys on this channel. So if you're interested in this topic, what I'm talking about, you can do no better than subscribe to Climate Crazes channel. So what is all this about? Well, in this video I did 6 months ago entitled Smith Responsible for Marxism. By the way, not many people watch this. I think it was about my worst viewing video. However, I personally think this is one of my most important videos I've ever done on this channel. And in this video, I talked about Thomas Malthus. And why is that important? Well, all the global elites today are Malthusians. What is a Malthusian? What was Thomas Malthus all about? Well, one thing Thomas Malthus was pushing was that the globe couldn't handle an increasing in population. Based on the technology, we couldn't grow enough food, we couldn't produce enough goods, and that people would die. And so we need to control population. He later in his life recanted that. He said I was wrong. Because what he didn't take into account was technology. That actually through advancing technologies, we can grow more food, we can produce more food, we can produce more other goods, and actually we can sustain a growing population. However, a big chunk of people took hold of Thomas Malthus and ran with it. And the global elites push it all the time. And how do I know that? Well, they themselves call themselves Malthusians. And I want to acknowledge some of the work that George Gammon's done in recent weeks and recent months. In this video, the global elite's secret revealed. They want you to be poor, here's why. And I'll put a link in the description below. I highly recommend you guys, if you're interested in what's going on and this whole subject, I highly recommend you watch this video. And he exposes them for exactly who they are. Malthusians. And in this video George did, he shared their own Davos Manifesto from 1973. And I've actually gone through it and read it myself. It's the World Economic Forum, a partner in shaping history, the first 40 years. 1971 to 2010. And if I can put a link in the description below, I will. Otherwise, you can Google it and you can download it yourself. It's a couple of 100 pages long, and in it, it's just all Thomas Malthus stuff. So look, it's crazy what's going on, and the whole climate change debate, global warming, global cooling before that. This is something that I've studied for over 20 years. Before I even got into economics, I was studying this. And I've probably got more books on this topic than I do economics and finance. I've read the UN's IPCC reports. Not many people have. I don't know many people who have read that. But if you want to expand your knowledge a little bit on this topic, read the anti-government panel on climate change, their report. Read Elaine Dewar, Professor Ian Plimer, Dr. Craig Idso, Dr. Yuri Israel, who used to be I think he's passed away now. He was the former vice chairman of the IPCC. Dr. Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace. Dr. Niels Axel Morner, who was the only sea-level expert on the IPCC. I think he was in the 2014 IPCC report. Could be wrong, don't hold me to that. Dr. David Bellamy, Dr. Judith Curry, John Coleman. The list goes on. The list goes on. So if you guys want more information on this, reach out to me. Let me know in the comments, and I can recommend books to you. I can recommend scientific papers. I can recommend thousands of scientists. Thousands. Professor Peter Ridd's another one that just popped in my head. So, yes, the global elites and our politicians are leading us down this energy change, the reasons behind it. And, once again, I recommend reading The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Yeah, it's about central banks, but in that he also shares this Malthus view, this whole climate movement and what's behind it. And he wrote that a long time ago before this became mainstream. And so anyway, I just, they're going down this route. They're pushing us down this route, whether you agree with it or not. And so we need to profit on it. And the economics, there's not enough minerals, there's not enough metals to meet the demand that where they want to push us. The fact with ESG that there's a lack of capital, a lack of investment, a lack of drilling, exploration in, oil and other fossil fuel industries means that there's going to be an asymmetric trade there, but there's going to be an asymmetric trade on those other metals as well, just because of the demand. $173 trillion investment is what's estimated to transition our energy. But but I agree with Bob Murphy. Even if you do believe in anthropogenic global warming, that's human beings being responsible. Look at the science. Read the IPCC reports. The activists aren't telling you the truth. What's in these IPCC reports? What the former vice chairman of the IPCC said. What the only sea level expert on the IPCC, Dr. Axel Morner, had to say about it. And then, even if you do believe in that, you've got guys like Bjorn Lomborg who does believe in it, but he says the solutions, we need more adaptation, we need to be smarter about this, because they understand the reality, the economics, that if we transition right now, then we're heading for a lower standard of living, poverty, and even worse. So anyway, I had to share this with you guys. I know many of you will disagree with me, and it's a very touchy subject. I get it, but the one thing I promise you guys is that I'll always be honest and share my opinion, whether I'm right or wrong. That's not what I'm saying, but I'll always be honest with you. Anyway, guys, love to see your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Take care, everyone. I'll see you all again on another episode of Finance Uncut.